Was that an explosion? Krell's eyes flew open and he glanced around frantically as he tried to move his body. How long had it been? A week? Maybe 2? Chilling screams, more explosions. Is that an alarm? Suddenly his entire world tilted and he was thrown onto the floor of the dark room that had become his personal hell. Frightened voices arguing in an unintelligible language passed quickly in the hallway outside. Those bastards. Whatever they gave me, I can barely move at all. A familiar blackness overcame Krell as he slipped back into the sweet respite of unconsciousness. Is that bird song? Krell had always loved to lie in bed listening to the morning birds back on Earth. He lay still, savoring the moment, and hoping against hope that when he finally dared to open his eyes, he would realize it was all just a dream, a nightmare. What the hell? When he finally worked up the nerve to confront reality, what he saw was not at all what he was expecting. He was in a bright room, surrounded by alien machines. The sounds he heard were being made by a small creature, about 4 feet tall, who seemed to be singing to itself as it looked at a monitor across the room. Completely different from the aliens who had abducted him. This one looked like an upright bipedal squirrel with a bushy tail and small hands, but it had the long neck and coloring of a giraffe and the bulging eyes of a lemur. So they come in more than one species. That's one goofy-looking creature. It turned around and blinked twice, then hopped over to the reclined bed he was laying on. "Oh, good, you're awake," it exclaimed in a delicate, high-pitched voice. You can speak English," Krell stammered. "Of course. Fortunately for you, the language data on the Vortex ship we found you on was undamaged. And well, I am a Tick Lodge. Rescued? I've been rescued from those monsters? What do you mean? Are you bringing me home?" "Oh no, that would be quite impossible. We're on a direct course to the moon base on Lyra 6. We have a delivery to make after all." Krell was still groggy and struggling to comprehend what was happening to him. "Who are you? What is this? What happened to those gray bastards who kidnapped me? What do you want with me? Why can't you just take me home? I am Tickmolodge, a Tick Lodge from Tick Lodge. This is the science lab on Chains Begone, a freelance vessel under Captain Moore's command. Those gray bastards, the Vortex pirates that kidnapped you, have been taken care of. A nasty species, the Vortex, specialists in genetic manipulation. They illegally abduct various species from across the galaxy to conduct their experiments and advance their science. As for what I want from you, well, I want nothing to do with you, honestly. I've never seen such an unappealing anatomy, but your fate ultimately rests with Captain Moore, and I've already told you, we have a delivery to make. Even if we didn't, we have no idea where your home even is." As Krell's head began to clear, he realized he could move again and started to sit up. He also noticed he was hungrier and thirstier than ever before. "I need some food and some water. I've got a terrible headache." Tickmolodge tilted his head and blinked twice, then said, "Of course. I expected the Vortex neuroparalyzers to last longer, but they must be wearing off. Follow me." Krell stood up slowly as Tickmolodge hopped across the room and through an open door. Everything felt strange. He felt like he weighed very little and his movements were awkward and exaggerated. The adjoining room was a simple round room with a large but short round table in the middle. Tickmolodge was just placing a small glass of water, maybe 50 ml, next to a dish containing a small gray sphere about the size of a timbit. Also on the table were a variety of objects he actually recognized. "My pack!" Krell exclaimed as he spotted his well-worn green hiking bag. "Did you find that on the other ship, the Zardan ship?" "Vortex, and yes, we found these items on the ship and thought they might be yours. The other members of your species on board were deceased when we arrived at the ship. What isn't yours probably belonged to them." "Were there other humans? How many?" "Humans? Is that what you call your kind? We discovered 11 bodies. You were the sole survivor. Those bastards will pay for their actions." Krell lowered himself to the floor and quickly drank the water. "Could I have more water? Is this sphere meant to be food?" "More water? Are you certain you're all right? There's a dispenser on the wall if you need more. And yes, that's food. Each Nutrisphere contains a full day's worth of nutrients." Krell approached the water dispenser, leaving the small glass on the table, and opened the valve. Relief, even if it's lukewarm. He bent down and gulped for what felt like minutes. When he finally had his fill and turned around, he found the small alien staring with wide eyes. I've never... You just... Are you insane? How could you possibly drink that much? Krell ignored the alien, returned to the table, and took a cautious bite of the gray morsel. Ugh, this tastes like uncooked flour. Despite the unpleasant flavor, he quickly consumed the rest. Still hungry, he looked around until he spotted a sphere dispenser near the water dispenser. He walked over, grabbed 5 more, and devoured them within moments. Incredible, he heard Tikmoloj mutter, and he turned to face the small creature. Much better. Now let's see what you recovered from those gray jerks. The small alien, now looking more than a bit bewildered, blinked rapidly several times but stayed quiet. Krell walked back to the table, grabbed his small pack, and opened it up. Everything was there. A 12-inch survival knife, camping hammock, a towel, 15 feet of sturdy rope, a multi-tool, a flashlight, a sewing kit, emergency rations, a first aid kit, a water purifier, his eyebuds, and most importantly, the ring his girlfriend Nora had given him before he left for his hike. Nora. I wonder where she is now. Then he noticed it on the table, the unassuming pair of glasses that had been behind his pack. Holy crap, is that a glass? It must have belonged to one of the other unfortunate souls the vortex picked up. He picked up the glass, placed it over his eyes, and slipped the strap around his head. Krell had seen all the advertisements, but had never laid eyes on a glass in person. At $15,000, it was well beyond his budget. The moment it was on, he heard a pleasant voice that seemed to originate from the center of his head. Welcome to Glass, the only personal computing device you'll ever need. Please state your name followed by the phrase "Set up Glass" to create a new user profile. Holy crap, it works. He removed it and carefully placed it in his pocket. I have some work to finish, and I'm sure you'd like some rest. If you'll gather your belongings and follow me, I'll show you to your quarters. The captain will want to speak with you before you're granted access to more of the ship. I'm certain he'll summon you before long. Krell glanced back at the table. He stuffed the 12 smartphones into his bag, along with a pack of gum, a pack of cigarettes, a small bag of weed, and a lighter. Then he silently followed the odd hopping creature down the hallway to his room. His room measured about 12 feet long by 6 feet wide. The only furnishings were a vertical cylinder resembling a small shower, which Tikmoloj referred to as a dormitube, and a very low bench. Krell took one look at the cylinder and decided he'd be better off using his hammock. After setting it up and climbing in, he tried to sleep, but his mind was racing. I'm trapped on an alien spacecraft. They appear friendly, but I can't trust them. But I need them. I definitely won't be able to get home by myself. What the hell is that squirrel thing? I could probably kill it if necessary. I wonder what it tastes like. I can't believe they allowed me to keep my knife. How large is this ship? How many aliens are aboard? I wonder what the captain is like. Maybe I can persuade him to help me. Can they read my thoughts? Perhaps they're listening right now. Get out of my head, you sick bastards. If you can hear this, leave me the fuck alone. I need to learn more about where I am. I need to discover everything I can. Knowledge is power. Thank God I have glass. Maybe I can use it to find a way back home. I wonder if they're aware of what it is. Krell opted to power up glass once more to explore its capabilities. He retrieved glass and placed it on his face again. Welcome to Glass, the ultimate personal computing device. Please state your name followed by the phrase "Set up Glass" to create a new user profile. Krell, set up Glass. A shimmering wave appeared as Glass enhanced his visual field with an immersive graphical overlay. Welcome to Glass, Krell. Let's take a moment to configure a brainwave interaction protocol. Please think of the color pink, then confirm visual match. Pink. Suddenly, everything in Krell's vision took on a distinct pink tint. Confirmed. His visual field shimmered back to normal. Great, now imagine opening the mapping application. Open mapping. A three-dimensional model of Earth materialized several feet in front of him. Confirmed. Brainwave interaction. Protocol complete. Determining current location. Unable to determine current location. Please verify your settings. Glass, disable all wireless receiving and transmission. Wireless receiving and transmitting functions disabled. Good. I'd prefer not to reveal that I possess this technology if unnecessary. Glass, what is today's date? Today is Friday, October 16th, 2054. It's been 3 weeks already. Krell removed his new glass and carefully stored it in his bag. Then he closed his eyes and got some much-needed rest. Krell awoke and gazed at the ceiling. This is absolutely surreal. 3 weeks ago, I was hiking on Earth. Last week, I was living in hell. Today, I'm alive and well on a goddamn alien spaceship. For the first time in recent memory, he felt genuinely optimistic. He decided to pass some time before his upcoming meeting with the captain by experimenting with his glass. After putting it on, he heard its familiar voice. "Welcome back, Krell. Glass, open contacts." Floating before him, a translucent plane with a blank contact card appeared, containing all the standard fields. "Glass, I'd like to make some adjustments to the contact form. Remove phone number, email, and address. Add title, species, and planet of origin." The contact card flickered momentarily, and the requested modifications were implemented. "Glass, whenever I converse with a new individual, identify them and populate the contact fields based on conversational context. Additionally, create a visual and audio recording of each interaction and attach it to the person's contact card. Request confirmed. Glass, generate a new 3-dimensional map titled Spaceship Chains Be Gone. Maintain a detailed layout of my surroundings and update it as I move about. Label our current location as My Room. Request confirmed. Glass will be encountering unfamiliar languages. Work on categorizing and interpreting these as we come across them. Unnecessary, all human languages are already stored in memory. Glass, create a new language category, Alien, and apply my previous command to that category. Request confirmed. Content with Glass, Krell reached into his bag, retrieved his phone, inserted his earbuds, started some music, and began scrolling through images of his home, family, and friends. A few hours elapsed before his door opened, revealing Tikmoloj waiting patiently on the other side. "Greetings, human. I trust you are well rested. The captain is expecting you in his meeting room." New contact added. "I managed to get a bit of rest. Ever heard of knocking, by the way? I could have been viewing inappropriate content in here for all you know." "I don't comprehend. Knocking? Inappropriate content? What are these concepts?" Tikmoloj sounded confused. "I suppose the language data they found has some gaps." "Never mind that, but next time you want me, tap the door before opening it and wait for me to tell you it's okay to enter." "What an odd custom. As you wish. Now we should really go. It's unwise to keep the captain waiting." "All right, let's hear what the good captain has to say. Lead on, friend." Tikmoloj appeared slightly irritated and said, "My name is Tikmoloj, not friend." Krell sighed as they began walking down the hallway. "I know. It's just an expression from home. Anyway, what's the captain like? Is he Tikmoloj as well?" This inquiry prompted a short, yet intense burst of clicks and whistles from the small alien that could only be interpreted as laughter. "No, no, no, certainly not," it chirped. "Tikmoloj aren't suited for captain ships. We're mainly linguists and scientists." "Wonderful. Another new species." The alien went on. "Captain Murr is an Aquarian. He has a quick temper, and he despises slavers, but he's just and fair. He's never quit a job, and he compensates the crew well, too." As they turned the next corner, they passed what appeared to be a mess hall. There were 6 enormous blue aliens seated at a table consuming some kind of foul-smelling yellow soup. Each one must have been at least 7 feet tall, had 4 arms, 4 legs, and 4 eyes, on a disproportionately tiny head. They were entirely hairless and resembled lizards as they lapped up their soup with long, flexible tongues. Krell couldn't help but shudder. Good Lord. "Are those Aquarians?" Krell inquired, gesturing toward the creatures with a tilt of his head. Tikmoloj looked up and blinked a few times before slowly replying in a puzzled tone, "Those are Grok's mercenaries. They're all over this sector. I never did ask, what sector are you from?" "I was hoping you could tell me. If you didn't notice, I'm quite new to this whole space travel thing. My entire life I believed that humans were the only intelligent species in the universe." Tikmoloj ceased hopping and rotated his head a full 180 degrees to look back at Krell. He blinked once, then spat on the floor angrily. "The only intelligent species in the universe?" it asked in a high-pitched voice. "What arrogance! I've never even heard of your species. I'll concede that your language is extremely complex, but that doesn't give you a right to make such an outrageous claim. Tikmaloj was practically frothing at the mouth by the time he finished speaking. Damn, he's really angry. Hold on a moment. I think there's been a misunderstanding. What I meant is... I know precisely what you meant, the small creature hissed. I'm quite done with this conversation. One more word and you can meet Captain Moore without the benefit of my translating. Oh crap, I've got to fix this somehow. I need this guy on my side. Glass, add a note to Tikmaloj's contact card. Easily offended, overly serious, no sense of humor. Note added. Krell bit his lip anxiously and stood in silence. Tikmaloj waited until he was satisfied Krell wasn't going to continue insulting intelligent life everywhere, then turned, hopped a few more steps, and placed his hand on a small orange panel on the wall. The wall itself seemed to fall away from the ceiling, and a narrow doorway appeared. Tikmaloj hopped through. Hurry up, this vertilift goes straight to the captain's meeting room, and we've kept him waiting long enough. Krell hurried into the elevator, and the wall closed itself behind him. The captain's meeting room wasn't like anything Krell had seen before. While the rest of the ship was the dull gray blue of some brushed metallic alloy, the captain's meeting room was vibrant and alive. The walls were a rainbow of colors and had the stepped texture of the sandstone cliffs of Earth. Along every wall were raised gardens full of fantastical flora and fauna. In the air, dozens of insectoids, similar in size and appearance to June bugs, buzzed lazily. One particularly large zebra-striped pumpkin near the side of the room seemed to be watching Krell very closely as he walked toward the raised stone circles in the middle of the floor. On the largest and tallest of the stone circles, sitting cross-legged and upright, was Captain Moore. Captain Moore looked exactly like an American bullfrog, or rather, exactly like a 6-foot-tall, 300-pound American bullfrog man hybrid. Krell could barely contain his amusement. Space frogs? That's hilarious! Captain Moore appeared to be meditating and was clearly startled when Tikmaloj reached up and tapped him on the shoulder after hopping over to his side. Captain Moore glanced toward Krell, then back to Tikmaloj, opened his mouth and said, his voice was surprisingly soft and melodious. It reminded Krell slightly of Chinese. New contact added. Beck glanced at Krell once more. Captain Moore requests that you sit down. Krell selected the stone circle directly before the captain and sat cross-legged, imitating the captain's posture. Still somewhat irritated with Tikmaloj, he addressed the captain directly. Captain Moore, I extend my deepest gratitude for rescuing me from the Vortex ship, returning my possessions, and providing me with food and shelter. If there's any way I can repay your kindness, you need only ask. My life and ongoing well-being are in your hands. Tikmaloj paused briefly before relaying the message to Captain Moore. Krell felt the deep, guttural, riveting laughter as much as he heard it. After the brief outburst, Beck turned to Tikmaloj and said, Tikmaloj glared momentarily at Krell before the captain continued. Krell thought he saw Tikmaloj flinch at the last part of whatever Beck had said. Once the translation was delivered, he was certain of it. He smiled. Finally, I can clear up this misunderstanding and perhaps even gain some sympathy from Beck. He once again addressed Beck directly. My name is Krell. I'm a human from the planet Earth. 3 weeks ago, I was hiking in a forest in a remote area of my world. The sun had set and I noticed bright lights in the distance, so I went to investigate. I discovered a strange small ship in a clearing. I don't know why it was there, but I had never seen anything like it. So I began to move closer. The next thing I recall, I was in a dark room, unable to move and in excruciating pain. There were 3 tall gray beings standing over me, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. After that, I drifted in and out of consciousness until I finally awoke in your science lab with Tikmaloj nearby. These face coverings are called glasses. They're common among my people. Sometimes our eyes slightly alter shape as we age and our vision becomes blurry. We utilize these to refocus incoming light rays as a corrective measure. As for Tikmaloj, it's really just a misunderstanding. I informed him that for my entire life, I believed humans to be the sole intelligent species in the universe. This is the prevailing belief of my people. We've never made contact with another species capable of complex thought. Only a handful of humans have ever left the atmosphere of our planet, and even then only ventured as far as our moon. I now realize how mistaken our beliefs are. Clearly, the universe is a far vaster place than we imagined. There's no way I could seriously place my species above those who can travel among the stars. As Krell concluded his explanation, Tikmoloj just stared in disbelief. Bick spotted a particularly appetizing-looking bug and effortlessly bullseyed it with his long, extendable tongue, swiftly snapping it into his mouth and down his gullet. This seemed to snap Tikmoloj out of his daze, and he shouted at Krell, "We're all going to perish because of you. We never should have taken you off that vessel." Beck looked to the frantic little being and said in his most soothing tone. Krell observed Beck's face closely as Tikmoloj translated. First he appeared sad, then pensive, then shocked. Beck leaned back and shut his eyes and sat quietly in contemplation. This can't be good. What did Tiki mean they're going to die because of me? Krell opened his mouth to speak, but before he uttered any sound, he saw Tikmoloj shaking his head, so he sat and waited. Eventually, Beck opened his eyes and addressed Krell directly. When Beck paused, Tikmoloj translated and looked toward the ground shamefully. Then Beck continued. He paused momentarily before continuing. Tikmoloj translated Captain Murr's words, and Krell nodded gravely. I understand. Thank you, Captain. After the translation, Captain Murr appeared satisfied and nodded. He then seemed to brighten and added, once he grasped what the Beck was asking, Krell was thrilled. He's taking me to the bridge of an actual alien spaceship. This is going to be so awesome. I'd love to see the control deck. The control deck was not awesome. Krell was anticipating something like the bridge from Star Trek, but what he got was a few benches facing a solid wall in a small plain room. Beck sat on the largest, most central bench and gestured for Krell to sit beside him. Tikmoloj sat on the other side of the captain. Captain Murr looked at Krell expectantly as Tikmoloj translated. It's very impressive. A square screen about the size of a 36-inch TV, hardwired into a pedestal, slowly emerged from the floor. On it, Krell could see a floor plan of the entire ship with various charts and diagrams that appeared to be data readouts. Suddenly, the front wall of the room lit up brightly, then showed exactly what Krell saw on the TV. Beck appeared quite excited. Tikmoloj translated, and Krell had to admit that while it wasn't flashy, it seemed like a fairly efficient way to control the ship. Tikmoloj translated, and Krell was somewhat skeptical, looking toward Tikmoloj. If it's all just connected to the computers, why isn't there another monitor in Captain Murr's quarters? That is possible, but the monitors are extremely costly. Most ships don't even have a monitor half this size, let alone such a large main screen. That sounded strange to Krell, but he wasn't really in a position to question how a spaceship should function. It's going to be a long day. Is it all right if I return to my room to have a meal before meeting the crew? Tikmoloj relayed the request to Captain Murr, who replied. Tikmoloj translated and hopped away, guiding Krell back to his room. When they arrived at Krell's room, Tikmoloj walked over and placed his hand on the wall behind the bench. The area he touched transformed into a small black screen with grainy white text. It reminded Krell of the vintage CRT monitors from the 1980s he had seen in a technology museum in Old New York. Tikmoloj touched some buttons on the screen, and a list of familiar English letters appeared next to a completely unfamiliar script. Tikmoloj sounded much less enthusiastic than usual when he said, "If you're going to be staying here, you'll need to learn Galactic Standard. That's the language I was speaking with Captain Murr. This is the dictionary I compiled to learn English. It shows the Galactic Standard, an approximate phonetic English pronunciation guide, and the English equivalent. I suggest you study diligently. I'll be back to get you for the meeting in a while. And Krell, I do apologize for jumping to conclusions and becoming upset earlier. I never even considered your species might be uncontacted." With that, Tikmoloj turned and bounded out the door, which shut itself behind him. "Yes, this is exactly what I need. Glass, incorporate this dictionary into your storage banks." As I scanned through it, request confirmed. Scanning the dictionary didn't take long. With a few tweaks to the visual translation program that tourists often use when visiting foreign countries, Krell swiftly set up Glass to translate the written script on demand. Within minutes and with Glass's assistance, Krell felt fairly certain that he no longer needed Tikmoloj's translations. Whenever someone speaks to him in Galactic Standard, Glass will show English subtitles, or a mental translation based on preference. When he thinks of a word or phrase in English, Glass will display both the Galactic Standard Translation and the accompanying phonetic pronunciation. Haha, this is super easy. No wonder this thing costs 15 grand. I'd be totally lost without it. To think that I can have so much control over my surroundings just by thinking about it. Krell wasn't sure what to do next, so he did what everyone does when they're uncertain. He picked up his phone. After scrolling through some old text messages, he decided it would be wise to make a backup, so he transferred all of the data to Glass. Then he repeated the process with the other 11 phones. He felt compelled to preserve something of the 11 humans that the Vortex had abducted and killed, even if it was just some personal pictures, videos, and communication logs. Perhaps someday he could return the data to their families. On the 6th phone, he actually found something useful. Apparently, Jenna Mila had been something of a bibliophile. Not only did she have hundreds of books on her phone, but also a complete copy of Wikipedia. He wasn't sure how it would help, but having access to the entirety of human knowledge couldn't be a bad thing. Then an idea struck him. If this works, I'll have some real influence around here. He devoted his next few hours to research. Just as Krell was finishing his final Nutrisphere, he heard a soft knock at the door and smiled, saying, "Come in," loudly in passable Galactic Standard. The door opened, revealing Tikmoloj standing on the other side, looking rather pleased and back to his energetic self. "Very impressive," he said in a congratulatory tone. "Your pronunciation and intonation need work, but I expected it would take much longer before you picked up any at all." "Thank you. We humans have a saying, practice makes perfect. I've been studying as you suggested." "To think you've learned so much already. I was humoring you before, but few species outside of the Tikmoloj can acquire a language so rapidly." It was pleasant to see Tikmoloj excited and in a good mood, but Krell didn't want to raise any suspicions about Glass, so he switched back to English. "It's not much. I've really just memorized those phrases and a few others. Is it time for the meeting?" Tikmoloj's mood seemed to temper slightly, and he replied, "Oh, I see. Still, it is a very promising start. The crew has already gathered in the common room. Follow me, and I'll show you the way." "He's sharp. I've got to be careful around him." Krell grabbed the 2 phones he had reset to factory settings and put them in his now empty bag, slung it over his shoulder, then walked out of his room. When they arrived at the common room, Krell saw the full crew of Chains Be Gone mingling in a large open space. Besides Captain Murr and the 6 Grox mercenaries, there were also 12 more members of a species he didn't recognize. They were about 5 feet tall, slim and pinkish, with tufts of hair covering parts of their bodies. They had 2 long legs with 2 joints, a long tail they appeared to use for balance, 6 arms, and large googly eyes that each moved independently. Those are crustacean generalists who perform a wide range of duties. Usually they stay in the engine room operating the computer terminals. When we're landed, they typically perform on-world tasks like moving freight or purchasing supplies. When Beck spotted Krell and Tikmoloj, he waved them over to the front of the room. He said as a smile spread across his broad face. Krell waited patiently while Tikmoloj translated. Then he replied in Galactic Standard, "Greetings, Captain Murr. I am well, thank you. I am looking forward to meeting the crew." Beck appeared both surprised and pleased at this. After the translation, Beck turned toward the gathered crew, whistled and clapped several times loudly. The crew gradually quieted and turned to hear what the captain had to say. Krell noticed that most of them were looking at him with curious expressions on their faces. As Beck started to speak, Tikmoloj whispered the translation into Krell's ear. The crew cheered and whistled. He gestured toward Krell as the crew nodded solemnly. At that, the assembled crew cheered again. "What does this initiation involve?" Krell asked Tikmoloj. "It's quite straightforward, really. Every new member of the crew must prove their commitment by engaging in hand-to-hand combat with a Grox. Don't worry, he won't harm you too much. It shows that you're willing to face danger without fear." Krell glanced at the 6 giant and intimidating aliens and swallowed hard. "All right, I'm not much of a fighter, but let's get this over with." The gathered crew stepped back, forming a circle, all except the biggest of the Grox. That brute must be 8 feet tall. The Grox looked at the captain and said, Beck appeared pleased with this and patted Krell on the back, ushering him into the improvised ring. Krell set down his bag and removed glass. I'll fight, but no way I'm risking glass with this giant. As he moved forward, the Grox began to slowly circle him, shuffling sideways on its four legs. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. I'm going to die. This thing is going to absolutely kill me. It talks like a damn toddler, probably doesn't even know its own strength. Krell had noticed earlier that the gravity on the ship seemed slightly weaker than back on Earth. I could probably check that with the accelerometer in one of the phones. Focus, no time for random thoughts. He figured his only chance would be to use the gravity to his advantage and catch the creature off guard, so he squared up and sprinted directly at it at full speed, yelling at the top of his lungs. He pushed off the ground as hard as he could, surprising himself by getting a good 4 feet of height, and flew knee first, mimicking a character from a fighting game he enjoyed on Earth. He was aiming for where the solar plexus would be in a human, and hit it spot on. There was a sickening thud as the Grox was knocked backwards by the force of the impact. It fell unceremoniously in a quivering heap of limbs, and Krell landed hard on the floor beside it. The crew started shouting and making all kinds of noise as they crowded around the unconscious Grox, some of them pushing him aside to get past. Krell stood up and looked down at the fallen Grox, bewildered and trembling with adrenaline. That actually worked? He glanced around and found Captain Murr, who looked utterly astonished. Then Beck started laughing in the same deep, percussive ribbiting Krell had heard before, as the Grox was being helped back to its feet by its companions. Krell picked up his bag and he and Tikmoloj followed Beck into an adjacent room. Tikmoloj appeared terrified. As he walked away, Krell glanced back and noticed the crew staring at him as if he were some kind of oddity and speaking quietly amongst themselves. 4 largely uneventful days had passed since Krell encountered the crew of Chains Be Gone. During that time, he had managed to appease the Grox mercenaries by spending an evening with them, consuming some sort of potent liqueur. It wasn't exactly like the alcohol from Earth, but it certainly packed a punch. The night concluded on a high note with Krell getting a piggyback ride from one of his new drinking companions before they both tumbled to the floor in fits of laughter. It turns out the Grox are rather friendly, especially if you can handle your blue-frothing, mint-flavored cocktails. As for the crustacean, he won them over by allowing them to borrow one of his phones and demonstrating how to play Tetris. None of them seemed able to progress past level 8, but they were captivated by the music and the display. They spent hours chuckling and watching each other fail to clear the inevitable surge of blocks. In return, they taught him a popular board game called Io Mio Ka. It was somewhat like chess, but played on a larger hexagonal board. Instead of both players having identical sets of pieces, there were 3 sets to choose from, each representing one of the 3 historically dominant galactic powers. A player won if they managed to capture their opponent's command ship. Krell wasn't particularly skilled, but he felt his losses were due to unfamiliarity with all the pieces rather than the strategic ability of his competition. For fun, he programmed the game into Glass so he could record and review his games at his leisure. When he attempted to play against Glass, once it became clear that the machine was significantly superior to his alien opponents. Krell devoted his spare time to learning Galactic Standard and conversing with Tikmoloj. He gained insight into the galaxy's workings, about the central militaristic government's control over technology and information distribution, about the Tikmoloj's struggles, how they had lost their homeworld in wars with a neighboring species, and about the ship's technology. In exchange, Krell answered Tikmoloj's inquiries about Earth. He spoke extensively about human achievements, omitting most of the wars, disease, death, and devastation. It was evident that aliens had conflicts among themselves, sometimes with considerable loss of life, but notions like genocide and mass civilian slaughter seemed unfamiliar to them. Krell portrayed humans as a largely peaceful and benevolent race, dedicated to learning and equality for all. He felt embarrassed by how savage human history was, compared to the rest of the galaxy, and saw no reason to depict himself as some sort of monster. Finally, it was time to land on the moon base on Lyra 6, and Krell was thrilled. Captain Murr permitted him to remain on the control deck with Tikmoloj as he brought the ship out of subspace roughly 10,000 kilometers from the system core. Apparently, entering or exiting subspace near a large gravitic influence like a star, or even a large gas giant, would tear you apart along with anything nearby. Due to this, most systems have strictly enforced ingress and egress points to manage traffic and ensure some degree of safe FTL travel. They were waiting on the control deck, and Krell and Tikmoloj were casually playing a game of Io Mio Ka when lights flashed on the main screen and text appeared indicating they were nearing the subspace ingress parameter of the Caxi system. Abruptly, the entire ship began to shake, starting gently and intensifying to the point where Krell wondered why the benches on the control deck floor lacked seatbelts. Note to self: acquire a proper chair for the bridge. Then nothing. Calm and silence. Computer, show visual feed from outside the vessel, Captain Moore ordered confidently. The front wall of the control deck became indistinguishable from a window. The view was truly awe-inspiring. A star field more vast and dense than anything Krell had seen on Earth. In the distance, a massive red sphere of fiery gas with several planets that looked no larger than peas, silhouetted against the brilliance of their star. Breathe. So this is space. What do you think, friend Krell? Quite a view, isn't it? It's incredible, Krell responded as he began to envy the few humans fortunate enough to see his own planet from a similar vantage point. Then text appeared at the top of the main screen. Incoming communications. Computer, connect us to the incoming call. The text vanished, and a video feed appeared on the center of the screen, showing an alert alien face with the compound eyes, antenna, and sparse hairs of a housefly. Krell thought he noticed Beck quickly lick his lips before the fly-like being began speaking. Welcome to the Caxi system. Please identify yourself and state the reason for your visit. This is Captain Moore of the Chains Be Gone. I have a delivery to make on Lyra 6, clearance ID NCC 11701. The fly being seemed to be examining a monitor for a moment before it replied. We anticipated your arrival a full cycle ago. Any issues? Nothing major. Our subspace reactor was acting up, so we entered real space to run some diagnostics. Turned out to be a glitch in the temperature monitor. We had it back and operational in no time. Wait a minute. How did they encounter that vortex ship? Shouldn't they have passed by if they were in subspace? Even if they exited for diagnostics, the odds of them meeting another ship seem astronomical. Krell decided to let it go until they completed the delivery on Lyra 6, but he made a mental note to ask Tikmoloj about it later. Glad to hear everything is fine. Proceed to Lyra 6. You can dock at port 36322. With that, the image of the fly thing vanished, and Captain Moore swiped through some commands on the datapad, causing the computer to accelerate them rapidly toward the sixth planet of the Caxi system. Krell knew that Earth was tiny compared to Jupiter, and he knew that Jupiter was small compared to some of the gas giants astronomers on Earth had observed. But as they approached Lyra 6, and just a fraction of the purple gas giant it orbited filled the entire visual field of the main display screen, he gained his first real understanding of just how enormous things could be. Lyra 6 itself didn't look like much, barely visible in the shadow of its gas giant, and it appeared to be orbiting slowly enough that it would be eclipsed in darkness for quite a while longer. Is the atmosphere there safe, or do we need to wear some kind of suit? Krell asked as they got nearer. Well, technically there is no atmosphere, but it should be fine for us inside the biodome, Tikmoloj replied, as perky as ever. As Chains Be Gone neared its port, Krell could count 7 softly illuminated biodomes on the moon's surface, 6 smaller ones arranged in a circle with a much larger one in the center. The central dome must have covered over 100 square kilometers and was a few hundred meters tall at its highest point in the middle. The outer walls seemed to be covered in small tubes, many of which connected to ships that were landed on the gray barren landscape next to the dome. This was the first time Krell had seen an alien craft. He didn't even know what Chains Be Gone looked like from the outside, though he had a pretty good idea of its size, which he estimated to be about 200 feet long by 100 feet wide and 50 feet tall. The ships docked at Lyra 6 ranged from small single-person shuttles to vessels easily 3 times the size of Chains Be Gone. The designs seemed to be as varied as the sizes. Krell was mesmerized. Chains Be Gone landed with a gentle thud. Then the computer announced that an air seal had been successfully established. I've already briefed the rest of the crew. Mo, you and Krell go find the parts you need, the adapter things. I'll be meeting with our contact. I don't want to spend any more time here than necessary, so don't fool around. And Krell, be careful and follow Mo's lead. I don't want your first experience on a new world to be your last. Trust me, Captain, I don't either. Good, then let's get going. Krell and Tikmoloj followed Captain Moore down to the cargo bay, where the crustacean were already loading crates onto trolleys, and the Groks equipping themselves with some kind of weapons from the small armory on the wall. Captain Moore opened the inner cargo bay door, and the diverse crew followed him out into the biodome. The first thing Krell noticed was that it was much busier than he anticipated. Naively, he assumed that the inhabitants would be asleep because it was dark. Instead, he found the place to be extremely active and packed. Most of the aliens were fly creatures, like the one who greeted them when they arrived in the system. It turns out they are bipedal and stand between 4 and 5 feet tall. They have 4 arms that end in gripping claws, and they appeared to be quite nimble. None of them were flying, so Krell doubted they had wings, but he wasn't entirely certain. Mixed among the fly creatures were a wide variety of aliens Krell had never encountered. Apparently, they come in almost every shape, size, and configuration imaginable. The second thing Krell noticed was the odor. The whole place stank of urine, feces, and vomit. It had the atmosphere of an overcrowded Chinese slum. There were markets and shops set up everywhere on the street, often cobbled together from scrap and leaning against buildings that were constructed of large bricks that had the same dull gray color of the dusty ground. The dim lighting was provided by long strings of bulbs running down the streets, attached to the fronts of the buildings. Every few blocks, there seemed to be a large communal fountain that was crowded with aliens collecting buckets of water. Glass, map out the city as we walk through it, and keep an open visual of the path we take. Request confirmed. All right, let's find that protocol converter and back to the ship as quickly as possible. Sure thing, Mo. Lead the way. After about 20 steps, Krell looked back and saw a clear blue path on the ground leading back to the airlock. Perfect, this is not a place I want to get lost. They weaved through the streets as Tikmoloj asked locals for directions to a shop where they might find what they were searching for. Krell was pleasantly surprised when they located one after only about 45 minutes of exploring. This is perfect, Mo. Let's grab a couple and get out of this dump. After some brief and spirited haggling, Tikmoloj agreed on what he considered a fair price, and they were on their way back. Well, that wasn't nearly as troublesome as I expected it to be, chirped Tikmoloj as they walked down a new street in the general direction of the ship. Not bad at all, but I'm starving. How about we pop into one of these places for a quick bite? My treat. Well, I suppose we still have some time left, and I could use some sustenance myself. Krell glanced around and noticed some aliens exiting a building, clearly carrying takeout. Great, that place looks as good as any. Let's check it out. They ambled into a dark hallway that stretched for about 50 feet and opened into a large, mostly vacant pub. There were 2 fly creatures sitting near the entrance, sharing what appeared to be a plateful of maggots. A tall, elongated being at the bar, sipping a small glass of glowing red liquid through a straw, and 2 aliens the size of humans that resembled werewolves playing Io-Mio-Ka in the far corner. Look, Mo, Io-Mio-Ka, Krell said enthusiastically while gesturing in their direction. Tikmoloj was visibly uneasy, standing as tall as possible, swiveling his head in all directions and blinking incessantly. Yes, it is a very popular game. I don't like this place, Krell. We should go somewhere else. You fret too much. This place looks fine. Let's get some food. Order me something I can eat, meat if they have it. Just not what those guys by the door are having. Okay, but let's be quick. They approached the bar and Krell sat on one of the high stools. Tikmoloj was too short, so he scrambled up and stood on his. The bartender, one of the fly creatures, came over to take their order. Welcome to the Lucky Star. You 2 aren't from around here, are you? Tikmoloj replied. No, actually. We arrived very recently to make a delivery and resupply. We'd like some food, please. Do you have nun-nun fruit and silverfowl? Yeah, we've got those. Excellent. I'll have 1 nun-nun fruit, and my friend here will have 1 of each. Sure thing. Make that 1 fruit and 5 fowl for me. The barkeeper looked slightly surprised but shrugged. Whatever. It'll be right up. Krell noticed Tikmoloj was giving him a curious look, so he said, What? You've seen how many nutrispheres it takes to fill me up. This will be the first meat I've had in ages. Gotta get in while I can. It only took about 10 minutes for the fly thing to return with 7 small plates of food. It actually didn't smell half bad, so Krell cautiously grabbed half a plate full of the fowl and stuffed it in his mouth. This is fucking delicious. Tastes just like duck. He quickly devoured all 5 plates of the scrumptious bird. By the time he started on the fruit, he glanced over and noticed Tikmolaj was less than halfway through his meal. "Hey, you behind the bar," Krell called to the barkeeper. "Make me up another 12 of those foul things to go." The barkeeper just shrugged and grunted what Krell took to be an affirmative. Before the takeout was ready, Krell felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see one of the Io Mio Ka players standing beside him. "I noticed earlier you took an interest in our game. Would you like to play?" "Krell, we really should be going," Tikmolaj reminded him nervously. "Yeah, I'll play a game. Why not? It'll only take a few minutes, Mo, and we're waiting on more bird anyway. I suppose one game couldn't hurt." Krell followed the stranger back to the table and selected his favorite pieces, the Ka. He felt they allowed for the most flexible style with opportunities for aggressive play, but a solid defense to fall back on if things got out of hand. His opponent chose the Io, the most offensive-oriented set. "I just learned the rules a few days ago, so take it easy on me," Krell said as he made his opening move. "We have a saying where I come from," his opponent replied. "Never take your eyes off the board and never underestimate your opponent. Remember it well, because I certainly will." Solid advice. The game was enjoyable, but Krell soon found himself struggling to maintain a losing position after his offensive push was repelled, and his opponent's counterattacks struck his flanks by exploiting the immobility of the strong defense he had prepared in the center of the board. "Damn, this guy is way better than anyone I've played against on the ship." After 3 more moves, Krell could see that his position was hopeless, and he conceded by removing his command ship from the board. Tikmolaj looked relieved that it was finally over and tugged on Krell's sleeve. "Thanks for the game. Wish I had time to get beaten again, but we should get going." "Don't leave yet. I'm sure you have time for one more quick game. How about we make it interesting? If you win, I'll pay for your meal." "And if I win, buy me 1 drink, the odds are heavily in your favor." Krell knew when he was being played and he didn't appreciate it, but the prospect of free food was too tempting to turn down, and it was a good chance to test out Glass against a stronger player. "Krell, we really should go. You can't defeat him. He is obviously much better than you." "You said exactly the wrong thing, Mo. All right, I'll play you again, but I'm not holding back this time. I wouldn't want it any other way." To mix things up, Krell selected Mio. His opponent once again chose Io. This time his opponent made the first move. "Glass, he's your opponent. Show me how you play, but don't win too quickly." Request acknowledged. A red circle indicated which piece Glass wanted to move, with an arrow showing the intended position. Within 35 moves, Krell was pressing a strong offensive advantage. His opponent was visibly upset. He looked angry as he struggled to piece together a defense after a failed attack in the opening of the game. Krell was grinning and taking almost no time between his moves. Tikmolaj was mesmerized by Krell's play. Both Tikmolaj and Krell had been too engrossed in the game to notice that the other patrons had departed and 6 more werewolf-like aliens had assembled in the bar. When Krell glanced up, smirking, his opponent was furious. "I don't know how, but you're cheating. There's no way you're this skilled. Do it now." Suddenly they were immersed in darkness, and Krell heard Tikmolaj's muffled cry as his opponent lunged over the board, clawing at his face. He tumbled backward and hit the floor hard. "Fuck, fuck, fuck. Glass, night vision." Request confirmed. The room was bathed in a greenish hue, and while not perfect, it did allow Krell to see that there were 7 of the wolf things, 5 closing in on him from behind, his Io Mioka opponent getting up off of the game table, and 1 looming over the small, crumpled form of Tikmolaj. Krell didn't waste time thinking. He kicked forcefully at the midpoint of the leg of the creature who had first attacked him and heard a loud pop as his attacker collapsed screaming. Then he reached under his robe and grabbed his survival knife as he rolled sideways out of the converging semicircle of foes. Clearly they could see him. They followed his movements and continued to advance, though slower and with more caution than before. Krell didn't give them time to come at him altogether. He unsheathed his knife and crouched low, then dashed at the nearest one, getting inside its reach and going for a clinching movement. When he had his left arm around the surprised creature's shoulder, he drove his knife into its side and twisted with his right. Its body fell lifelessly to the ground as he withdrew the small blade. He then launched himself at the one standing over Tikmoloj, checking it forcefully into the wall and savoring the satisfying dull thud and loud crack as his momentum crushed its bones against the dense brick. I guess those years playing high school hockey finally paid off, thought Krell, as he scooped up Tikmoloj under one arm and ran for the door. "Don't let him escape," he heard one of the creatures yell as he sprinted out of the grimy building and into the streets. Glass, night vision off, request confirmed. His vision cleared and he kept running toward the ship until he reached his blue path from before. Glancing back, he saw 4 of the wolf-like beings chasing him at full speed on all 4s. Krell had a head start, but they were gaining on the long, straight street. He made a sharp turn and followed the path to the ship, hoping the zigzagging route they'd taken earlier would confuse his pursuers, and praying they'd be slow to change direction. When he finally spotted the ship, he saw the crustacean loading the last of their purchased supplies, while Captain Murr stood outside talking with the Groks. "Captain Murr, get on the ship. We need to leave now," he shouted from a few hundred yards away as he raced toward the ship, carrying the still motionless Tikmoloj. Captain Murr looked up when he heard a loud voice calling his name. What he saw made no sense at all. Krell was shouting incoherently and sprinting toward the ship at an incredible speed while carrying what appeared to be Tikmoloj's body. A few hundred paces behind him were 4 Dokagi warriors steadily closing in. "My Groks, friends, form a defensive line and aim at those Dokagi scum. Don't fire until I give the order." "Yes, Captain." The Groks grabbed their weapons and arranged themselves in a tight semicircle in front of the captain, blocking all access to the ship. Krell had managed to get Captain Murr's attention, and the Groks were spreading out and aiming their weapons at his pursuers. Holy shit, we actually made it back. He didn't stop running until he'd passed the line of Groks. Then his exhaustion hit him like a ton of bricks, and he could barely manage to hand over Tikmoloj to the captain before collapsing on the ground to catch his breath, watching as the wolf things got within 20 paces of the Groks, then halted, growling and hurling insults at the crew. One of the Dokagi stepped forward and shouted at the captain, "That cheating scum killed 2 of my clanmates and hurt a 3rd. We demand his blood for their honor." Captain Murr glanced down at Krell. "I don't know what you lot did to deserve it, but these are my crew and you're not getting anyone's blood. Krell, get on the ship. Groks, follow me in and take down any of those bastards if they so much as twitch." Krell scrambled through the airlock into the cargo bay. The wolf creatures apparently took Captain Moore's threat seriously, as they just stood and growled while watching the rest of the crew pile into the ship and the cargo bay door shut behind them. Once aboard, Beck handed Tikmoloj to a concerned-looking crustacean and said, "Take him to his room and stay with him until he comes to. Looks like he just got knocked out." He then approached Krell, wrapped a large hand around Krell's throat, and slammed the human hard against the ship's wall. "You endangered my crew and got my friend hurt. Pull anything that stupid again, and I'll toss you out of the damned airlock myself. Got it?" Krell was exhausted from his desperate escape, and his adrenaline was rapidly fading. Having his throat squeezed by the captain didn't help either. He struggled to form words between heavy breaths. "Yes, Captain. Got it. Good. Clean up and meet me on the control deck." Captain Murr released the pressure on Krell's throat, and Krell slid down the wall, resting on the floor and breathing heavily. After a few minutes, Krell could feel the ship taking off, and he managed to recover enough to stumble to his room and change out of his bloodied robe before heading to the control deck. When he arrived, he could hear Tikmoloj excitedly recounting what had happened. "And I've never seen anyone play like that. He was winning so easily after losing the first game so badly." They both turned to look at Krell as he walked through the open door and up to the benches in the middle of the room. The main display showed only the ship's status, which indicated they were already in subspace. "What's this about your ability suddenly improving in the second game?" Krell paused, uncertain how to respond, then said, "He must have just been letting me win, buying time for the others to arrive for the ambush." "That does sound like something a cunning Dokagi would do. All right, I've heard enough. When you left the ship, I told you to listen to Mo. You openly disregarded him when he repeatedly suggested you should leave, and it nearly got you both killed. I don't know how you managed to escape, but you're incredibly fortunate you did. Dokagi are known to skin their victims alive. You were in for a horrific, slow, and agonizing death. Damn, I really messed this up. The captain is right. Why didn't I just heed Mo's advice? My damned ego got in the way again. Krell opened his mouth to apologize, but before he could utter anything, the captain interrupted him. Not a word. Go to your quarters and rest up. I'll be calling a full crew meeting soon to discuss our next destination. Now go. Krell didn't want to worsen the situation, so he left the control deck and trudged back to his room feeling awful. When he finally returned, he slumped into his hammock, quickly dozed off, and spent the next few hours having nightmares of werewolves flaying him alive. After several hours of fitful sleep, Krell awoke feeling dreadful about how events had unfolded on Lyra's season. If I dwell on the past, it will overwhelm me. I'm stuck, stranded on an alien spacecraft, and the only way I can live a worthwhile life is to move forward. Krell frowned as he pondered his current predicament. I'm not really trapped. For the first time in my life, I'm actually free to do whatever I want. As far as I know, I'm the first human in space. I should show these guys just what humans are capable of. I have a chance to shape history. Krell smiled and decided that he needed a long-term strategy. Potential end goal. 1. Find a way to return to Earth, go back to my mundane old life, finish my accounting degree, work in some lousy corporation for some lousy manager. Screw that. Potential end goal. 2. Find a way back to Earth, bring a ship capable of FTL travel, introduce humanity to the vast reality of the cosmos, and begin our unstoppable journey toward the stars. Not bad. That would certainly put me in the history books. I'd be famous, wealthy. Everyone would want to hear about real aliens and my adventure amongst them. Potential end goal. 3. Forget Earth. Become supreme ruler of the galaxy. After I do that, I could go back to Earth. Not only introduce them to the galaxy, but hand it over to them entirely. Imagine the headlines: Human abducted by aliens, conquers known, galaxy for the glory of mankind. Krell's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at his door. He then heard Tikmolog's cheerful yet uncertain voice. Hello, are you up? Captain Moore has called for a meeting with the entire crew. May I come in? Hey Mo, sure, come on in. The door opened and Tikmolog bounded into Krell's room. I know the captain scolded you for what transpired on Lyra's seas, but I share some of the blame too. I should have insisted we head straight back to the ship after finding the adapters, but I didn't. Anyway, thank you. I'm not sure what happened after the lights went out, but I know you saved my life. I owe you a great debt, and I won't forget it. Krell felt a bit awkward. In truth, he hadn't been thinking about Tikmolog at all during the fight. He had just grabbed him instinctively. Don't worry about it. Anyone would have done the same. Very few could have escaped 7 Dokagi warriors alive, let alone unharmed and carrying a full-grown Tikmolog. Anyway, we should head to the meeting and see what the captain has in mind. Krell walked and Tikmolog hopped as they made their way to the common room. Upon arrival, the rest of the crew were chatting among themselves, and the captain was nowhere in sight. When the crew noticed Krell and Tikmolog, they stopped what they were doing and gathered around the pair, eagerly asking them to recount what happened on Lyra 6. Aliens certainly seem to enjoy stories, Krell thought as he told the crew about how he stabbed the first Dokagi with his knife and crushed the second. No hurt you? Inquired one of the curious Groks. Not really, got a bit bruised up, but nothing major. One of the crustaceans, who appeared to have been pondering for a while, then asked, So that item you carry around is a weapon? I thought it was just a tool. My knife? Well, I suppose it's both a weapon and a tool. Krell replied as he unsheathed his knife, displaying it to the crew. See this part on the back with all the teeth? That's for cutting through organic material, like trees or plants. The sharp edge is for slicing, and it's pointy to make it effective for stabbing. Also, the handle opens up and contains some emergency supplies in case you're lost. The crew was examining the knife admiringly and passing it around when Captain Moore finally arrived. As before, he whistled and clapped a few times to get the crew's attention. Then he began. As you're all aware, our stop at Lyra 6 didn't quite go according to plan. He looked directly at Krell. I had intended to find us another job while we were there, but unfortunately, we were compelled to depart early. A Grox patted Krell on the back with 2 of its arms, and a crustacean chuckled. Captain Murr cleared his throat and went on. Fortunately, we were able to resupply, so the good news is that we won't go hungry. I've decided that the best course of action for Chains Be Gone is to head to the Zephyr Nebula. I have contacts there who typically have some use for a crew of our particular skills. Whatever Yilla was, the crew seemed enthusiastic about going there. Krell, Mo, I want you two working on that tool of yours. Everyone else, do what you do best and keep the ship running smoothly. I've got some matters to attend to in my chambers, if anyone needs me. With that, Captain Murr exited the room, and the crew began excitedly discussing Yilla. Tikmoloj and Krell went to the science lab to start working on the protocol converter. Krell took out a phone and set it up to project on a nearby wall. All right, here's the protocol for the phone's USB connector. Do you have a schematic of the galactic protocol? It should be in here somewhere, Tikmoloj said as he searched through a cabinet. Aha! He pulled out a manual for the ship's computers. The pages appeared to be printed on some sort of plastic polymer sheets, much like currency back on Earth. Tikmoloj programmed the protocol converter, and Krell, with the help of Glass, created a program for the phones that would allow them to associate particular signals with the functions of the ship. Thank the stars, everything is open source and easily modified now, Krell thought as he recalled the horror stories he had read about proprietary software and coding by hand with needlessly complex artificial languages. Mo, how many visual sensors are there again? 48, 8 on each side of the vessel. And how many weapons? 2 plasma turrets. They went on like this for days. By the time they had a testable prototype, Krell had learned everything about the ship's systems and capabilities. Krell grinned at the thought. It's all falling into place, even easier than I expected. I could pilot this damn thing myself if I needed to, or wanted to. They proceeded to the engine room to connect and test the system. Tikmoloj plugged it in directly, and Krell set up the wireless network and linked the controller phone to it. He configured it to project on the wall and launch the app. A visual display of the ship's layout and sensor readouts appeared on the screen and projected image. Looks good so far. Mo, verify those readouts for accuracy with the computer. They appear accurate, Tikmoloj replied enthusiastically. All right, I'm going to test the lights. Krell tapped the engine room on the map and it expanded to fill most of the display. He could see himself, Tikmoloj, and the 3 crustacean indicated by small pulsing blue circles. Along the side of the display was a list of controllable variables: lights, temperature, atmosphere, doors, and gravity. Krell touched the button for lights and a slider appeared. He moved the bar to the left and the lights dimmed accordingly. Then he returned it to its original position and they brightened again. It works! It works flawlessly! Krell was thrilled, and Tikmoloj looked pleased too as he whistled and bounced up and down. They continued testing for hours, fine-tuning the system, and eliminating any bugs they encountered. Finally, they were satisfied and decided to present it to Captain Murr. They found him meditating in his meeting room, the colorful room where Krell had first met him. It's only been a few weeks since I first encountered Beck, but it feels like ages. My first time here, I was weak, lost, and scared. Terrified, in fact. Now I possess real power. Hell, I could kill everyone on this ship just by thinking about it if I wanted. I'm more confident than I've ever been in life, and I have a clear idea on where I want to go from here. Everything's looking up for Krell. Captain Murr, we've got a functioning prototype to show you. Hello there, Krell and Mo. I expected it would take much longer. Please, demonstrate how it operates. First, I'd like to explain a bit about the system. I have 12 phones recovered from the Vortex ship. With a setup like this, security is crucial, so I've devised what I believe is a solid solution. One of the phones, the modem, is connected directly to the main computer. It functions as a receiver and transmitter. It's password protected and can't be tampered with. The only way to disconnect it is to physically unplug it, which would shut down the entire system. The program that runs the ship is only installed on the modem and this phone, the controller. Even if someone managed to connect to the network, they couldn't do much with it. The network itself is heavily encrypted and secured with a strong passphrase. As an additional precaution, I'd like you to keep the 10 extra phones. They have many potential uses, such as short-range communicators, and it will be up to your judgment who has access to them and when. Very good. I'm pleased to see you've thought this through carefully. Obviously, we can't allow control of the ship to fall into the wrong hands. What about the software itself? How does it function? Krell activated the projector of the controller phone and showed Captain Murr how to use it. As you can see, we've translated the phone's operating language to Galactic Standard to make it easier for you. Now, tapping this button will launch the application. After experimenting with and testing the features, Beck was very impressed. This is truly remarkable. I haven't seen a ship in the galaxy that has such a compact, portable, and efficient control system. You two have really done an outstanding job. Back in his quarters, Krell decided to test out the hidden features he had incorporated. If he made any alterations to the ship's operation through glass, they would be undetectable via the captain's handheld controller, and even the datapad on the control deck. They could be seen from the main computer, but even if the crustacean were monitoring, they would most likely assume that the changes were authorized and implemented by the captain. Glass, display ship, monitor. Request confirmed. A three-dimensional image of the vessel materialized before Krell. He could view all the data readouts and monitor every individual aboard. The captain remained in his quarters, experimenting with the lighting. Tikmoloj was heading to the mess hall. The Groks were all in the common area, and the crustacean were dispersed throughout the ship, several in their bunks. They preferred shared quarters to individual rooms, and the rest in the cargo hold organizing supplies. Glass, increased gravity in my room by 33%. Request confirmed. Krell suddenly felt heavier than he had in weeks. It's just like home. He bounced up and down a few times, performed some jumping jacks and push-ups. Glass, increased gravity in my room by another 33%. Request confirmed. Damn. Krell could barely lift off the floor when he jumped. It felt as if he was carrying 100 extra pounds. Perfect. Now I can really exercise and regain some muscle mass. The next alien bastard that tries to mess with me will be in for quite a shock. Glass, whenever someone approaches within 3 feet of my door, reset gravity to the default level. Request confirmed. Krell knew there was no time to waste, so he began the first of many high-grav workouts. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. The following week was relatively uneventful. Krell continued his high-grav training and felt stronger than ever. He also exercised his mind, playing Io Mio Ka at every chance. He quickly surpassed the crustacean in skill, and the only one aboard who could challenge him was Tikmoloj. Krell was mid-workout when he noticed the gravity in his room decrease significantly moments before a knock at his door. "Krell, it's Tikmoloj. May I come in?" "Come on in, Mo," he replied and began wiping himself down with his towel. He assumed Tikmoloj was seeking a rematch after being soundly defeated earlier that day, but he actually came to deliver some news. "We're running low on fuel for the subspace drive, so we'll be docking at a refueling outpost soon. Captain Murr asked me to bring you up to the control deck to brief you before we dock." Tikmoloj and Krell made their way to the control deck, where they found Captain Murr sitting comfortably on the main bench. "Hello, friends. It's good to see you. The control device you built has been working flawlessly. I can't believe how convenient this is. Krell, as I'm sure Mo has informed you, we're going to be docking at a refueling station shortly. When we land, I want you to take a Grox and go purchase some food for a feast. I think we're all getting tired of the bland Nutrispheres we got on Lyra 6, and the crew could use a morale boost after being cooped up in the ship for so long." "Sounds fine to me. Will Mo be joining us as well?" "No, your galactic standard is good enough now that you should be able to manage it alone, and I need Mo for something else. I do want you to take one of your communication devices with you, though. I doubt anything will happen to you with a Grox mercenary, but we don't need a repeat of Lyra's 6. If there's any trouble, I want you to run back to the ship as quickly as possible and send me a message. Understood?" Krell felt a twinge of embarrassment at the mention of Lyra's 6. "I understand, Captain. I'll be fully cautious." "Excellent. Then go get ready and wait in the cargo bay." Krell went to find Sharga, the Grox he got along with best, the one he fought during his initiation to crew. By the time they got everything prepared and headed down to the cargo bay, the ship had exited subspace and was approaching the refueling outpost. Glass display visual sensors. Request confirmed. A visual display of the exterior of the ship appeared in Krell's field of view. The refueling depot was a large metal station orbiting a rocky planet that was sparsely covered in what appeared to be massive mining operations. There were about 20 ships docked at the station. Most of them were small and sleek, about a quarter the size of Chains Be Gone. Krell closed the display and waited for the ship to dock. As their vessel finally docked, Krell and Sharga disembarked and began searching for someone who would sell them the provisions they sought. Depth, 0. Author, Boring Al. Captain Pulo, it was just as you anticipated. We've detected the quarry exiting subspace and preparing to dock at the station. Captain Pulo grinned to himself as he hobbled toward the airlock. So predictable. Let's proceed as planned. It didn't take long to track their target. Its scent left a clear trail to follow. It clearly wasn't alone, but they had expected that. When they spotted it entering an isolated nutrition store, they quietly slipped in, unnoticed. Krell didn't know what struck him. Literally. One moment he was standing beside Sharga, talking to a food merchant. The next he was lying on the floor with a blinding headache, staring at the lifeless, smoking remains of Sharga. Glass send message to Beck. Ambush, need help. Request confirmed. Krell's last conscious memory is being carried away by 4 sets of clawed hands. When he regained consciousness, he was in a dimly lit room bound tightly to a cold metal table. There was a Dukagi wolf thing sitting at a small table nearby examining his phone. Glass was on the table along with his knife and his credits card. Oh no, is that the guy I played at Iomio Ka? This isn't going to be pleasant. He struggled to free himself from his restraints, but it was futile. The Dukagi noticed his struggle and limped over to him. Hello there. After Lyra's 6, I couldn't wait to see you again. You really did cause some trouble. Still upset that I beat you at Iomio Ka? You owe me some food if I recall correctly. Of course, how impolite of me. The Dukagi picked up Krell's knife and pressed down on his restrained left hand, flattening his fingers on the table. He then pressed the blade of the knife against the middle knuckle of his pinky finger and hammered down on the back of the blade with his free hand. Krell screamed as half of his smallest digit was cleanly severed. This was the first time in his life that he felt real pain. They call it blinding pain for a reason, and it's not that your tears blind you, though they do. It's that the pain is so severe, your senses seem to become overwhelmed. You can't hear, you can't see, you can't smell. You can only scream and cry and hope that the excruciating pain will overwhelm even your consciousness. After what felt like hours but was likely just minutes or even seconds, it finally started to slowly subside. Eventually, Krell was left panting heavily with his eyes tightly shut, trying to escape the reality of the situation. Then he felt it fall into his open mouth, his severed finger. Spitting it out and coughing, he turned his head to the side and retched violently. He could hear the Dukagi bastard chuckling. What's wrong? Was your meal not to your liking? Krell managed to mumble a weak, "Fuck you," before the Dukagi struck him with the knife's handle, and he slipped once more into unconsciousness. Captain Murr and Tikmolaj were on the control deck, mapping out jump locations, when the phone on the bench beside them vibrated and beeped. Tikmolaj glanced at it and read the message. "Oh no, Captain, look at this!" "Damn it, we need to find them quickly. Sorry, Mo, but I need your help, and you're not quick enough." Captain Murr easily lifted Tikmolaj and left the room at a run. Soon they were in the cargo bay, ready to board the station. Tikmolaj was fiddling with the phone. "Captain, the ship has received an order from the station. There's been a lockdown. No ships are to dock or depart due to a security breach. All crew are to return to their ships immediately." "No, we're going to find Krell and Sharga. Can that device tell us where they are?" "The best it can do is tell us how far away they are, but not which direction they're in." "All right, whoever ambushed them isn't foolish enough to wait around on their station. They're probably back in one of the ships. We'll run past all of the docking ports. Let me know when we're close." "What about the Groks? Aren't we bringing them?" "The station's on lockdown. No way security will miss 5 armed Groks mercenaries. If they see us, they'll just assume we're heading back to our ship. We're in this alone." Captain Murr opened the cargo bay door and took off running, with Tikmolaj clinging to his back for dear life. Krell awoke to Dukagi claws being repeatedly dragged forcefully across his forehead, stopping just short of piercing his eyes. "This is it. I managed to survive almost a month in space before being tortured to death by a damn space wolf." "Ah, you're awake. We can resume our little game." "Just finish me off and be done with it, you twisted bastard. I know I killed some of your friends, but I didn't make them suffer. This seemed to infuriate the Dukagi. No, you did far worse, it growled. You robbed them of their honor. You won't die for a very, very long time. Now where were we? It trailed off as it picked up the knife and drew it viciously down Krell's forehead, across his right eye, halting against his jawbone. Captain Moore hadn't been running long when he heard Tikmoloj yell that they were close. He turned down the nearest porthole and found the sealed airlock of a small fighter ship. He pounded loudly on the door. Open up, station security! I need to ask you some questions. Captain Moore knew they had the right ship the moment the door opened, and he saw a Dukagi warrior on the other side. It took a second for the Dukagi to recognize Beck, but as soon as he did, he reached down to shut the door. Beck didn't allow it. He charged forward with full force, grabbed the Dukagi's face in his right hand, and smashed its skull into the wall behind him. He dashed down the dimly lit corridors, checking every room and listening for any sounds, as Tikmoloj hopped behind him in stunned silence. In the 6th room he entered, he found 2 more Dukagi sitting at a table eating. They were surprised, but quickly recovered, standing up and snarling. They began to spread out and encircle him. Captain Moore swiftly picked up a metal stool that was near the entrance and swung it at the Dukagi on his left. He caught the tip of its snout, which burst in a spray of blood and teeth. The creature fell to the floor howling. The second Dukagi charged from behind and sunk his claws into Beck's thick throat, drawing a greenish viscous fluid. Captain Moore roared and spun around, throwing his attacker to the floor. As the Dukagi was getting up, Captain Moore leaped toward it, knocked it over. They both landed on the ground with Beck straddling the creature's back. He wrapped his hands around the Dukagi's chin and pulled back until he heard a sickening popping snap. Beck rose and approached the first Dukagi. It was huddled in a ball, whimpering. Where are they? He yelled at it. It sobbed and gestured toward the ship's rear. Beck gripped its throat and ended its suffering. Let's go, Mo! Tikmoloj stood there, stunned, watching Captain Moore stride down the corridor toward the back of the vessel. He knew Captain Moore was strong. Aquarians are renowned as some of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. But this was carnage, and Tikmoloj was simply terrified. He waited until the captain was well ahead before slowly hopping after him. The Dukagi was occupied slowly slicing a strip of flesh from Krell's arm and didn't hear the door open over his victim's screams. When he noticed Krell's head turn toward the door, he spun around just in time to dodge the swinging fist of an enraged Aquarian. There was no time for thought, no time for dialogue. He lunged with Krell's knife, plunging it deep into the Aquarian's torso as its forward momentum sent them both tumbling to the floor. Then he felt the Aquarian's powerful hands clasp around his throat, and air would no longer come. He stabbed repeatedly. His hands and fur were coated in the Aquarian's thick blood, but it wouldn't release its grip. His thoughts dimmed, and darkness engulfed him. Tikmoloj entered the room and immediately retched at the stench and the sight. Blood was everywhere. Krell was bound to a table, barely breathing and severely wounded. Captain Moore lay on the floor atop a Dukagi warrior, both covered in his thick green blood, neither moving. Captain! Captain! Are you all right? There was no answer. He swiftly hopped over to Krell and removed the restraints. What did they do to you? He wept. The answer was evident, but he didn't know what else to say. Krell slowly stood up, granted limited mobility from a fresh surge of adrenaline. Mo, we need to get back to the ship. Now! He limped over to the table, grabbed his phone, glass, and his card, and handed them to Mo without a word, then hobbled into the hallway. Tikmoloj swiftly caught up to him. What about the captain? Dead. Do you know the route back to the ship? Tikmoloj was in a haze. Krell was correct, though. They needed to return to the ship, so he hopped ahead to guide the way. Follow me. When they finally reached the ship, they found the crew waiting in the cargo bay. Krell fell into the arms of a stunned Grox, and Tikmoloj hopped away, ignoring the crew's questions. Krell could sense the ship leave the station and begin rapidly accelerating as he drifted once more into the sweet relief of unconsciousness. 1 Earth year has passed since the events in Glass, Part 4. During that time, Krell worked with the crew of Slave No More, taking on any job they encountered. They eventually amassed enough wealth to acquire a large plot of real estate on a sparsely populated planet, which they use as a base of operations. Currently, he is journeying through hostile Helix space in his heavily modified personal ship, Soar or Perish, delivering crucial medical supplies and weapons to the Aquarian homeworld. Sensors are detecting a Class 3 Helix Raider, roughly 5 times the mass of Soar or Perish. They're here, boss, just as you predicted. Krell rubbed the scar running down his face. It always seemed to itch before a battle. Of course they are, Chitter. It's the most logical spot for an ambush. We're going to adhere to the plan. I know it's risky, but with high risk comes high reward. Damn straight it does. I'll go prepare the crew. Good luck and don't get us killed. Chitter scurried off the bridge and down the ramp that led to the main hall of the ship. From his chair overlooking the bridge, Krell could easily issue directions to the techs manning their stations. Naturally, he could control the entire ship himself using glass, but that would be too dangerous if this turned into a dogfight. Blip, get those shields up to 25%. Spark, deploy 2 of the turbo lasers, the lowest power ones we have. If they fire, return fire. Mo, go fetch my bag from the workshop. Come straight back here once you have everything. Captain Vex, our sensors have detected a small freighter entering the system. It appears to be a match for Soar or Perish. Captain Vex grinned as his target unwittingly flew directly into his trap. Those fools. Ready the entire boarding team. Tell them to kill on sight. I want those medical supplies and weapons secured and moved to our ship as swiftly as possible. Right away, sir. Captain Vex's second-in-command responded before swiftly exiting the control deck. Shieldmaster, charge shields to full capacity. I don't want any surprises. Gunmaster, as soon as we're within range, fire freely with all our turbo lasers. If their shields hold, launch a pulse torpedo. That should be sufficient to disable their systems. Once their shields fall, cease turbo laser fire. We don't want to risk damaging the cargo. The Shieldmaster and Gunmaster replied in unison, As you command, sir. It didn't take long for the Helix Raider to get within range of Soar or Perish, and it immediately opened fire. The shots were largely ineffective, and Blip easily maintained the shields at 25% power. It would require substantial direct fire to deplete them. Now they'll try to disable us with a pulse torpedo, Krell predicted, moments before they saw the large missile launch. Everyone strap in! Seconds later, their small ship was violently shaken by a powerful proximity detonation. The lights went out and gravity control failed for about 15 seconds before the auxiliary system activated. Shields, weapons, and thrusters disabled, Blip warned. Prepare to bring shields online if they fire again. Otherwise, stand by. Krell waited calmly as the attacking ship drew nearer, preparing to board. Glass display active ship floor plan. Request confirmed. A 3-dimensional display materialized in his field of vision. He could see Tikmolaj returning to the bridge, Chitter and the rest of the crew in the cargo hold, and himself, Blip, and Spark on the bridge. A minute later, the ship shuddered again as the Helix Raider attached its boarding tunnel to Soar or Perish's hull, perfectly aligned with their main access port. Glass, unlock primary access port, secure all exits from the main hall. Request acknowledged. Krell observed through glass as blue dots streamed into the main hall in dual lines. Once they had all entered, and he could hear them pounding on the sealed doors, he snickered to himself. Like shooting fish in a barrel. Glass, amplify gravity, 500% in main hall, and disengage the ceiling fasteners. Request acknowledged. The boarding party was tense. One never knew what to expect when infiltrating a vessel. Fortunately, they were experienced professionals with numbers on their side. The small ship they were invading likely had fewer than 10 crew members. Even if all were armed and in defensive positions, the 40-member boarding party should be able to subdue the defenders with relative ease. They were taken aback to find the access port unlocked, but attributed it to the pulse torpedo's impact. They were even more startled to encounter no resistance in the main hall of the ship they were boarding. Once all safely aboard, they followed protocol and began checking each door systematically, intending to clear the ship room by room. Finding all doors locked, they were preparing explosive charges when suddenly an invisible force pinned them to the floor. Then, without warning, the entire ceiling descended with tremendous force, crushing the entire boarding party in one swift, violent impact. Spark flinched as the bridge floor shuddered, and 40 voices cried out in agony. Krell grinned. Glass, restore gravity in the main hall to normal. Retract the drop ceiling and unlock all doors. Request acknowledged. All right, Mo. Time to get to work. Blip, the bridge is yours. As Krell descended the stairs toward the main hall, he could hear the whirring of motors hoisting the drop ceiling back into place. When he opened the door, he was met with a gruesome scene. The floor was strewn with bodies and gore, all lying in a pool of dark blue blood. The same blood was splattered on the walls, and in some areas dripping from the ceiling. My, that was unsettlingly effective, chirped Tikmoloj enthusiastically. He had witnessed plenty of death over the past year, and it no longer shook him like it once did. Well said, Mo. Let's see what awaits us on the Helix vessel. Krell took the lead, and Tikmoloj bounced along behind as they trudged through the carnage and traversed the boarding tunnel onto the Helix Raider. Krell dashed into the first chamber of the Helix ship at full tilt, hoping to catch any crew off guard. Luckily, the room was vacant. All right, Mo, let's locate the engine room. It didn't take long. Most ships share a similar layout, with the engines and main computers situated near the lower aft of the vessel. There they encountered two techs that Krell swiftly overpowered, binding them as Tikmoloj rummaged through the bag to find a pre-made protocol converter compatible with the Helix ship. Appears to be a standard S-class computer system, he noted as he plugged in the converter and established a network. It's all ready. Try linking with Glass. We're connected. Glass display active floor plan. Request confirmed. A floor plan of the ship materialized before Krell's eyes. Seems fortune favors us, Mo. Only 12 crew aboard, 9 on the control deck, and 1 heading towards the boarding tunnel. Let's go greet them. Back in the first room they entered Krell, and Tikmoloj found a crew member evidently waiting for news from the boarding team. The rear door slid open and Krell charged through. The waiting crew member had no time to react before Krell struck him forcefully in the side of the head and bound his unconscious form. Nearly finished, Mo. Let's head to the control deck and persuade these fools to surrender. No matter how often it occurred, Tikmoloj was always amazed at how effortlessly Krell managed to seize enemy ships. Let's do it, boss, he responded as they moved swiftly towards the control deck. Glass, disrupt all gravity regulation on the control deck. Request confirmed. Krell paused for about 30 seconds before his next action. Glass, increase gravity on the control deck by 300% default and route my voice into the intercom. Request confirmed. Greetings, Captain of the Helix vessel. I've eliminated every member of your boarding party and seized control of your ship. Listen carefully if you wish to survive this. Captain Vex was satisfied with his own cleverness at ambushing Live Free or Die. His superiors would be thrilled when he returned with a full cargo of medical supplies and weapons intended for the despicable Aquarians. Suddenly, everyone on the control deck began floating as their gravity control appeared to malfunction, and the crew floundered helplessly. Blast it! Get me a status report and fix this grav, he ordered to no one in particular. A brief time passed, and they were all violently slammed to the floor, barely able to even breathe as another grav malfunction hit them. Get! Engine! Techs! He was cut off by a deep voice thundering over the control deck's intercom. Greetings, Captain of the Helix vessel. I've eliminated every member of your boarding party and seized control of your ship. Listen carefully if you wish to survive this. In a moment, I will normalize the gravity. I want you and your remaining crew to exit the control deck immediately and proceed directly to the escape pods. I don't believe in unnecessary killing, but if you do anything other than follow my instructions to the letter, I will not hesitate to end your miserable lives. Gravity on the control deck returned to normal, and the crew slowly stood up, most in shock. One of the techs, who had a somewhat stronger mental resilience, ran over to a console and started pressing buttons. Captain, I'm completely locked out of the computer. They really do have total control. Very well. You heard the voice. For now, we will do as it says. Let's get to the escape pods. Our vengeance will have to wait. Krell chuckled as he watched the remaining crew move toward the escape pods. It's just too easy, Mo. Once the pods had been launched, he gathered the 3 crew members that he had tied up and led them to the last remaining pod, tossing them in and launching it himself. Let's get back to the ship and get out of here before any more Helix Raiders show up. I doubt they'll fall for the same trick twice. When they made their way back through the access tunnel and into Soar or Perish, They found the crew cleaning the main hall. "Quite a mess your little trap made, boss," Blip said, grinning when he spotted them. "It worked better than I expected," Krell replied with a smirk. "We hooked a phone into the Helix computer. I want you and Spark to take one of the spares and fly that thing back to base to be stripped down for parts." "No problem, boss. We'll go right now," Blip answered before he and Spark jogged off to get the supplies they'd need. Krell clapped and whistled a few times to get the attention of the rest of the crew. "Listen up, friends. Today was a great victory. We're going to make a lot of credits from that Helix ship, and that means you're each going to get a big bonus when we return to base." The crew hooted and cheered. When they settled, he continued, "However, we haven't completed our primary mission. So let's pull together for the final stretch and get these supplies delivered." The crew cheered again and looked more determined than ever as they returned to work. "All right, Mo, let's get back to the bridge and get the hell out of here."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.